Well, welcome to another edition of Leadership Radio, where leadership isn't a theory, it's right here and it's right now. So let's talk some leadership. And with us today from San Antonio, Texas, once again, the sage of leadership, Vergil G. Schmidt. Vergil, welcome to the program today.
Thank you, Kerry. Glad to be here.
It's great to have you, sir, as always. And today, everyone's mindful of the fear that's out there with the COVID-19 pandemic, the reaction to it, possibly the overreaction to it, and what have you. So if someone's thinking of their leadership or their leadership style or their leadership ability, how can they know, Vergil, if they're a fear-motivated leader? How can they detect those telltale signs?
Well, Gary, that's a really good question, and it's very relevant for today because I don't know anybody in any sector of our society who is not in some way or another affected by fear leadership. In fact, this whole COVID thing was sold to us, and the shutdown and everything that goes with it was driven by fear. And so what I think about individual leaders in comparison to COVID is that COVID helped reveal whether or not you are a fear-driven leader or if you're a confident leader in your position. So I want to suggest that there are at least 4 ways, and there's certainly more, but there's at least 4 ways in which we can determine whether or not we are a naturally fear-driven leader, because COVID's just revealing what has been there for a long while. But then I look at my own life. When I started back in 1980, I was driven by fear, and I knew it back then, but I didn't know what to do about it. Nobody talked about it, and so you just do a lot of trial and error and read and whatever, but you finally get over it, or you got to get over it if you're going to succeed. And so, what I just like to do to share today are just some thoughts that I think are suggestions to help you determine whether or not that is your situation. If it is, there's help. And, we should do a follow-up conversation and provide the flip side, because there's help for, here's where I think leaders are made, not necessarily born. You might have certain skills and benefits, but you're not a leader when you start. You got to learn some things. And this is just part of the learning process.
And quite possibly the hard way.
Well, it is the hard way, but it's better to learn it the hard way than not to learn it at all.
Hey, amen, brother.
I can't imagine anything any worse than going through all of your life, ending your career, and still be a fear-driven leader. That's sad.
Because if anything holds people back, it's fear.
Yeah, I mean, that's that's a big thing. In fact, it's interesting when they say of public speaking is the biggest fear in our culture.
Right.
Now, I was a public speaker. I had overcome that, and that was a horrendous thing, and it was so ridiculous to be afraid like I was. There was no rational reason. And really, when you talk about this, there's no rational reason to be afraid about anything.
Right.
If you understand some of the basics of living life and processing your culture, your context, and then doing what you need to do to be able to address those issues, and then with confidence you can overcome it. And that's really what my objective would be in our interaction today about this topic.
Very good. So,
So the first,
go ahead, Virgil, with your suggestions
yeah,
as to how to tell if you're that kind of leader, a fear-driven leader.
the first suggestion I would offer is that if you as a leader are afraid of missing out on something, you might be missing out on a conversation. If you've got to be at all the meetings and you've got to have a record of all the email communication or whatever,
right?
Then you're guilty of micromanaging, and a micromanager is a chokehold on any organization, because you cannot grow that organization beyond yourself. You've got to be a part of everything. And there's only so much of you. You're not omnipresent. As far as I know, none of us are deity. So consequently, we're gonna restrict growth. Not only that, but you also restrict the growth of your staff.
Yes.
Because it communicates to them that you don't trust them.
Right.
So they're not sensing any value that they bring to that table. So therefore, they're going to start being quiet. They're not going to contribute. They're not going to offer suggestions. They're not going to do a lot of stuff because they just don't believe that you want to hear from them. And so that's a poor way of trying to lead any organization. So the net result is you're fear-driven. That's why you don't trust them. You can't delegate. And one of the worst things in life is not to be able to delegate to other people responsibility, and to say to your staff, I don't need to know all the details. Here's what I'm looking for. This is what I'm going to watch. Please communicate that to me. The rest of the process, you take care of the best way possible. And that's freeing, that's liberating.
Yes.
And they'll respond to that. People respond to that. The second suggestion I would make, Carrie, is that if you just make safe decisions, then that means that you are afraid of failure.
Okay, another fear of failure.
Yeah, fear of failure. And, fundamentally, we learn in failure, not in successes.
Right.
And if the only thing you ever had was success, then you'd never grow personally. Your organization would never grow. Your people would never grow. There would be no need for extra training. There would be no skill requirements. They would just act like robots.
That's right.
And you wouldn't want that at all. So there'd just be no growth whatsoever. If you just play it safe all the time, things get boring quickly, and people can predict.
Stagnation would set in, and I often think of that saying, if at first you don't succeed, try and try again. Yeah. A confident leader would say, if at first you don't fail, try and try again. Because that's how you learn.
Absolutely.
That's how Edison finally got the right formula for the light bulb. 10,000 tries or something.
Yeah, huge amount, So anyway, and then the third suggestion I would offer is that if you're content with the status quo, then you are a fear-driven leader. That means you can't handle constructive criticism. You won't seek the opinion of others. And you can't handle comments that people make. You will take them personally.
Yeah.
The fourth suggestion I would offer is that if you avoid confrontation, those less than desirable conversations that you have to have with people, then that suggests that you're a fear-driven leader. And that leads to procrastination. Procrastination is lethal to growth. And so you can talk about timing. There's a time to do those sorts of things, there's a time not to do those sorts of things, but on average, you don't want to put it off too long.
Right.
And this is one of these things within leadership that I think is intuitive. I'm not sure you can teach this exactly. I think you got to be able to read and you got to be able to feel how much credibility you have with those that you're leading to make this confrontation more successful or less successful. But in any event, you have to do that. If you don't, it leads into more negativity. And negativity is a cancer to any organization. You can't afford to support that. You've got to somehow address it. And so, these are just 4 suggestions. There's more. There's a lot more you could talk about in terms of this, but this is just kind of introducing the subject. So I would just simply leave it at that, for today, and just say, Kara, this is something where we can use as a launching pad into something else that will address these things and correct them.
Absolutely.
And make positive leaders out of us.
You got it, sir. And it's a lot of what you've said here, it's not that the successful leader, the confident leader, it's not that they should like confrontation.
No. All right.
Or that they should necessarily want to change a winning formula. But it says that they overcome those things.
Right.
And, because I think it's quite natural for a person not to want confrontation. But to avoid it, like you say, is a cancer that you can't afford to wait. You can't afford to leave.
The big thing is that the person becomes confident.
Yes.
And who he is and what he's doing. He understands the process. He understands the people. He knows how to react to certain conditions that will either push the thing forward or slow it down. You just gotta, if you're afraid, you won't do anything. Then you just procrastinate. And then whatever slippery slope you're on will just continue. And it'll intensify as time goes by. You can't afford to do that. I agree. It's not natural to enjoy confrontation. I don't enjoy it at all.
Right.
But I do a lot of it over the years, and so and it's harder in a volunteer organization because you don't have the authority of an office as such. Most of your authority comes on the basis of your relationship. So you have to build up relational capital in order to invest in that type of situation. But once you do that, you create such a loyalty that people will just quite naturally follow, even if they think you're wrong.
Very, very good. And it reminds me of a definition I heard one time of successful people. And that is success, and it could be applied to leaders, of course, because leaders are people. But and the quote is that successful people do the things that unsuccessful people refuse to do. And so I like what you've done here, Vergil. You've sort of covered a fear of people, a fear of criticism, fear of failure. All of those have been incorporated into those points that you have laid out there today. And I'm sure many a leader out there has felt those emotions to one extent or another. The great leaders don't get stuck by them.
That's
They
right.
don't,
That's right.
you know,
That's-
because fear can lead to inertia. Absolutely.
Right.
And the great leaders know how to overcome inertia
Right.
and build momentum.
Absolutely. You
So
build
thank you
momentum.
for laying it out in such a sequential and organized way for us, because if I was to do it, it'd be scattered all over the map. So, and remember, leadership makes a difference when it makes a difference in you.